learning objectives for today.
This meeting is being recorded.
Oh, I'm just going to ask everyone to mute so we don't have any backgrounds. There we go. Okay, so our learning objectives for today is we're going to briefly review OPWDD and some eligibility requirements, an overview of PCCS and what we do. And then a majority of the time we're going to spend together today is going to be an overview of our housing rental subsidy program. And then we have some time towards the end for any questions, concerns, anything you'd like to share with us. Please feel free throughout the presentation to stop me at any point. You can utilize the chat box. You can also feel free to unmute yourself and share. We strongly encourage, your participation throughout the presentation. And to start us off, just to go over OPWDD, which you might hear us say a few times, the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities is operated through New York State, and they are responsible for coordinating services for all New Yorkers with developmental disabilities, including a variety of different disabilities, cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, autism, etc. They provide services directly through the state as well as through private nonprofits, which are known as provider agencies. So PCCS is considered a provider agency through OPWDD. And so with that, we do operate underneath OPWDD. We also have here a slide in case anybody is not currently enrolled. I don't believe I heard anyone mention that, so we won't spend too much time on this today, but this slide just has information on how to access services and how to receive services. The first step would be to go through the front door process. Each region has their own DDRO, and so within Staten Island, we are considered Region 4. And so you'll just see on here some contact information, again, if in the event anybody needs it. We will be sharing the slides for today's presentation, so you'll have access to this as needed. To get into a little bit about who we are at PCCS, our mission here at PCCS is that we are a nonprofit organization creating social change within communities by supporting people with disabilities on their search for identity and acceptance. Our vision is to reconfigure humankind to be genuine and authentic human beings, disabled and non-disabled, creating a society of belonging and helping one another to live a good life. So how do we do this? Our strategy is to help a person build comprehensive supports that will engage and propel them to lead the life they want to live. Our impact, providing support to the Staten Island community and the greater New York City area to help create and facilitate relationships, resulting in a more diverse community while providing services to people with disabilities to engage and be part of their community. And we have 3 core values, our first being support. It's our responsibilities as human beings to support ourselves and one another. Our second is equity. To participate in community is to have active citizenship. To be a participating citizen, one must have opportunities which are equitable, which accommodate the differences all humans have. And last but not least, acceptance. One of the most vital components of having a quality of life is love. It's okay to tell someone you love them. More importantly, it's okay to show them. To accept one another for who they are and what makes them human could be most validating experience. It is truly self-empowering. And so for our specific services that we provide, we offer a variety of different OPWDD specific services, and then also have some additional support services that aren't necessarily operated through OPWDD. And so just to quickly run through the list, we offer a day habilitation without walls program. We have community habilitation, respite, our housing rental subsidy program, which again, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about today, our family education and training program, a ton of employment programs, which include community-based pre-vocational, pathways to employment, supportive employment, and employment training program. We have 2 group homes. We have fiscal intermediary and supportive brokerage, which falls under self-direction. In addition to those OPWDD services, we do offer continuing education credits for social workers. We also have a presentation called the Disability Ally Initiative that we try to offer to as many people as possible. We have been able to present this at conferences, small businesses, local places within our community, schools. If you ever know somebody who is interested in this training, Nisha is our direct person you'd be able to connect with to learn a little bit more. And then we also offer consulting services as needed, typically to other provider agencies. So what we've all been waiting to talk about, our housing rental subsidy program. So what exactly is HRS? HRS is a program that supports adults 18 and older with developmental disabilities who wish to live independently or receive a rental subsidy by providing funds to pay for housing costs. HRS operates very similarly to other government-funded housing, such as the Federal Housing Choice Voucher Program, for example, Section 8. HRS is designed to support income-eligible adults with IDD who choose to live independently within their communities. People who are enrolled in HRS must be financially and legally responsible. So for example, they have to be the leaseholder for their housing unit as a responsible tenant. And so with that, specifically at PCCS, we have an intake assessment where we go through a variety of different topics to kind of see where the person is at and what support is needed. This is a program where someone can be approved or denied for. When we do feel that someone might not be ready for, living independently, we don't necessarily deny them indefinitely. We might, provide a support plan and say, these are the 3 specific areas we really want you to work on, maybe through community rehabilitation or a different service. And, let's circle back in 6 months from now and see kind of where your progress is at. We want to be there to support people to be able to truly live independently, but we also recognize that we do not ever want to set someone up for failure. People enrolled in HRS are expected and required to contribute 30% of their countable income towards housing costs. And then the subsidy from HRS will pay the difference up to the maximum amount, which we'll get over in, I think, a couple of slides. I have the maximum amounts set for a 1-bedroom apartment, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, and 4-bedroom. And then towards the end, we're also going to go through a little bit of a breakdown on what a sample subsidy could look like, so it makes a little bit more sense. People may also be eligible for assistance with their security deposit and other moving expenses. So when somebody first comes into the HRS program and they are moving into their apartment for the first time, OPWDD does provide what's called a transition stipend. And that stipend can assist a person with any moving costs, security deposit, furniture, just, daily living needs to get somebody started for example, cleaning supplies, or, really just any common household items. And that is capped at $3,000. People within this program may choose to live, completely alone, or they might want to live with roommates, or they might have a live-in caregiver. People who have the housing subsidy, they may choose to have staffing support or not. So we'll get into that a little bit further through the next slide when we talk about community rehabilitation and, the potential to have that staffing support. Community rehabilitation, referred to as ComHab, is a direct service that is optional but highly encouraged. So we can't necessarily force anyone in HRS to receive community rehabilitation, but we do highly encourage it when somebody is enrolling in HRS. This service provides a direct support professional, otherwise known as a DSP, for a flexible number of hours per week based on the need of the person. So, for example, we have some people we support in HRS that receive 8 hours a week of ComHab, and then we have some folks that might receive 20 hours of ComHab. And again, just depending on the need will depend on how many hours a week the person would receive ComHab. The DSP provides support in all life skills, such as learning how to budget, support with food shopping, support accessing medical care, maintaining independent living style, and much more. There's really no limits on what somebody can work on through ComHab. Again, it really just depends on the specific person and their needs. The DSP can also support the person to have discussion and communicate with the landlord or the management company as needed. And the DSP can also help with setting up utilities and finding budget-friendly options to utilize, and so much more. And again, it's not mandatory for someone to enroll in this, but it is highly encouraged just to have that support option available. Even if someone, might not want 8 hours a week, maybe they only want 4 hours a week, and just have someone kind of just come in, check in, make sure everything's okay. We're very flexible. The state is very flexible with the ComHab hours. And so we would be able to work with the person to see what would work best for them. So what type of housing is acceptable? So housing units include a single family home, a townhouse, a condo, apartment, a co-op, or a manufactured home. Acceptable housing must meet OPWDD's criteria for housing assistance and must be available to rent, own, or occupy under a legally enforceable lease agreement. Housing must be made available to the public or through an OPWDD provider agency. Housing units must meet OPWDD's housing quality standards, which are based on the Department of Housing and Urban Development, known as HUD. Housing quality standards, which is under 24 CFR 982.401, used for the Section 8 voucher program. And so within this, OPWDD requires that the provider agency, in this case, otherwise known as PCCS, is required to complete at least one annual apartment check a year, and we go through the required OPWDD documents. One of them being this QA checklist, which is just making sure that everything in the apartment is up to standards and up to code. And then the other is called a participation agreement, where the person receiving the subsidy is agreeing to abide by the rules set forth by OPWDD. We have a specific slide on that as well, but just wanted to add that in there because it is related to the requirements of, what housing is acceptable. The housing unit must be a specific separate unit with a kitchen and bathroom facility and meet local and state standards, such as a legal dwelling unit. OPWDD housing subsidy does not support renting a room. So if, say, for example, you are a family member and you have a legal two-family house where there is a separate entrance, a kitchen, a living space. It doesn't necessarily have to have a complete separate bedroom. It could be a studio apartment, but it has to be a separate legal dwelling unit. And that would be okay and acceptable. So the main piece here is that it is separate and it is a legal apartment, and the address, there's a clear difference on whether it is the main unit in the house or, the side apartment or basement apartment, or whatever it is. So some examples we see there is, 1A added to somebody's address or 1B, etc. So some benefits for the landlord. So at the beginning of every month, landlords will receive automated clearinghouse, which is known as ACH, direct deposit toward the tenant's portion of the rent. And this comes directly from PCS. Anyone who's enrolled in our HRS program, we receive the subsidy amount from the state, and then we pay it directly to the landlord through direct deposit. PCS supports the person enrolled in HRS with strongly encouraging community habilitation. And this is just an additional bullet point from the slide that we went over a few minutes ago. PCS provides the below required support, so assistance with communicating with landlords as needed. Like I said before, we complete at least an annual formal apartment check. Each person is assigned an HRS coordinator who is the person's main contact for any of their HRS needs. This includes, but is not limited to, at minimum, once a month in-person apartment visits. And then we do have an on-call 24/7 emergency support line that everyone we support in HRS has access to. And again, the person may receive additional supports that assist him and her in maintaining and sustaining his or her tenancy. So the landlord responsibilities include, but are not limited to, preparing and executing a lease and/or occupancy agreement. So this is an absolute must. And like I mentioned before, the person who is receiving the subsidy must be on that lease. And that includes, their full name and all the information that the lease includes, whether or not the tenant is responsible for utilities or if the landlord is covering utilities within the rent. Maintaining the apartment according to the housing quality standards set forth by New York State, accepting the portion of the rent from the person supported. So like I said in the beginning, a person is responsible for paying at least 30% of their income towards the rent. And so we do expect the people we support to pay the landlord directly their portion. Contacting the tenant and/or PCS if there are any difficulties or changes to the rent, maintenance, lease renewal, etc. So a few of PCS's responsibilities include assisting with locating available apartments, hosting information sessions such as these to connect with more folks, viewing and approving housing units, reviewing leases with people as prospective tenants, processing and delivering the subsidy portion of the rent, assisting with moving, setting up homes, establishing utility and cable accounts, and helping people maintain their tenancy. And then, of course, ensuring that people meet are meeting their housing responsibilities. So as of November 1st, 2022, OPWDD and New York State released the new maximum subsidy amounts, and they are significant increases from what we have been working with in terms of rates over the last few years. So at this time, a one bedroom, the maximum subsidy amount somebody could receive is $2,054. A maximum subsidy amount someone could receive for a two bedroom is $2,340. For a three bedroom apartment, the maximum subsidy amount is $2,952. And then for a four bedroom apartment or house would be the maximum subsidy amount of $3,173. It is important to note if someone is choosing to live with a roommate or a friend, that the cost gets split in half. And so depending on how many bedrooms the house would be dependent upon on how many people are moving into that apartment or house. So here's a sample template because I know that sometimes some of this can be confusing. And so with this, we're going to use an example of a person named Joe. So let's just say Joe has a monthly income of $883. $200 is taken out to account for personal spending. So it's automatically deducted that the state will see that Joe now has a countable income of $683. Joe's rent is $1,300 a month. Joe's gross housing contribution is $205 from this, right? Because 30% of 683 is 205. With this, we know that Joe is responsible for paying utilities. It is not included in this specific, case studies rent. So Joe pays $60 a month in utilities, which is now considered an offset for his housing contribution. So Joe would be responsible for paying his landlord $145 a month instead of the $205 because of the $60 utility offset. So how the state calculates this, they take the housing contribution $205, they subtract the $60 utility offset, and so that's how they come up with the $145 monthly rent that Joe would be responsible for. With this, Joe would receive $1,555 from the subsidy, which would be directly paid to the landlord from PCCS via direct deposit. And then Joe would be responsible for paying $145 each month directly to his landlord. So before we get into any specific questions, some important information to know. The PCCS HRS program currently has a wait list for new people interested in the program, and we have contact information for who to contact if you are interested in either learning more or having a more intimate discussion on the program itself, and also being added to the wait list. Right now, we currently support 70 people in HRS and have a list of people looking to move for a variety of different reasons. We have some folks who are looking for a bigger space. We have folks looking for a different neighborhood. Some folks, their leases are expiring and maybe they've lived there for 3 years and they're just looking for a new journey to go on in a different apartment. Or maybe their rent is increasing and they can't afford the new proposed rent. And so with that, I know I just went over a ton of information. Does anybody have any questions?
Hi, this is Oleg. Just a quick question. My home, I have an accessory dwelling unit, like a mother-daughter house, I guess. And it does not have a separate legal address. It is not a legal two-family. I know there's been a lot of talk about legalizing accessory dwelling units. And do you guys foresee any change? Like if, let's say it passes in next year, will that change also the housing subsidy program to include accessory dwelling units? Any clues on that?
To be honest, I haven't heard anything about that specifically, but what I could say is that if that does happen from a legal perspective, I can definitely see OPWDD taking that into consideration, and seeing how that could be incorporated in the HRS program.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, it's Elena. I have a question for
Sure.
you. Are you familiar with any of the tax incentives for the landlords or for, people in construction that want to go into this?
Yes, so we didn't add that in here because I'm sure that could be an entire separate information session. So I can definitely send out, when we send out the PowerPoint, we can send out the packet of, all of the monetary incentives in terms of tax related things.
Okay, and if we wanted to move ahead and get involved with PCCS through this process, how do we do that? Like, what would be our first step?
So since, and just correct me if I'm wrong, you said that your son currently is receiving services, right? So we already went through the OPWDD process.
Yeah, he's a little guy, so it's, that's far in the future. He's only 11, so he's going to be with us for a while. But Frank, who's on this call, is interested in helping others. So we're looking to get this moving, sooner than later, and to make it available for other people as well.
Awesome. So on this next slide, so for any like program specific stuff, when, even if it's just HRS, if say you were interested in learning about day program or any of the other services we have, that would be Lucia. For any connections with potential apartments that are available or housing units, that would be Ashley Boland, who is on this call today with us.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I just had a quick question.
Sure.
Hi, I just had a quick question. Is the waiting list for the individuals receiving the housing, or is it for the landlords to get into the program?
So it's for individuals who are looking
Okay.
to get into the program.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Joining in and out. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
And just to add into that, we do expect once we are at the capacity to take on additional intake specifically for people who are interested in the program, there really is no way to measure how long it might take to find an apartment. It really just depends, again, on the person's needs. But it's not like we can only do one intake at a time. We can definitely take in probably as many people on the wait list and just assess where they are at. Some people, might come to us and say, I've already identified an apartment. I just need help with getting the subsidy amount. So it really just depends on the person and their unique needs. And then in terms of landlords or realtors who have available apartments, that is open 24/7.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Any other questions, thoughts? All right. Well, if anybody thinks of any additional questions, like I said, we are going to be sending out this information. We'll also send out that tax incentive information, as well as our contacts. So you can always feel free to directly reach out to us. And I just want to thank you all for taking the time to learn about the program and asking some really great questions. And we look forward to continuing the connection we made today.